January 31, 2024, News Report 1. Bloomberg reported that according to data released by the Japan Automobile Manufacturers Association on January 31, Japan's total automobile exports in 2023 were only 4.42 million units. However, the Chinese Ministry of Industry and Information Technology previously announced that China's automobile exports for the same year had reached 4.91 million units, almost reaching 5 million units. This signifies that China has surpassed Japan, becoming the world's largest automobile exporter. This rapid overtaking is remarkably outstanding. In the electric vehicle sector, BYD had already surpassed Tesla last month, becoming the world's largest electric vehicle manufacturer. China's largest destination for automobile exports is Russia, with 909,000 cars exported last year, accounting for 19% of China's total automobile exports. However, there are discrepancies between the Ministry of Industry and Information Technology's data and official Chinese statistics. The ministry claimed that China exported 22,500 cars to Japan last year, while BYD's data showed a cumulative export of 1,237 cars from January to November. The nature of the remaining 20,000 cars remains unknown. The controversy over whether these Chinese cars exist in the Japanese market, involving disputes over gasoline and electric vehicles, seems unresolved. According to the Ministry of Industry and Information Technology's data, China exported a substantial number of electric vehicles to countries worldwide last year. The largest market was Russia, followed by Mexico, Belgium, Australia, the United Kingdom, and Saudi Arabia, each around 210,000 units. However, there are reports suggesting that China's electric vehicles are mostly exported through the used car market. This practice allows them to circumvent regulations and requirements imposed by recipient countries, including safety and other specifications, as used cars are relatively flexible and subject to fewer regulations. While China's position as the world's largest automobile exporter has elevated, there may be significant disparities between this figure and its actual market performance in various countries. Even in the largest single market globally, the United States, Chinese cars are scarcely seen. In some other countries, such as Australia, the United Kingdom, and Belgium, automobile sales figures may also differ from the actual situation. Recently, U.S. Secretary of Commerce Raimondo stated during talks in Luxembourg that Chinese electric vehicles pose significant national security risks in collecting information about the location and surroundings of driving vehicles. This has sparked discussions about imposing tariffs on Chinese cars, and the U.S. government is considering new executive orders to prevent foreign adversaries from obtaining highly sensitive personal information. News Report 2. On January 31, the Taiwan Ministry of National Defense reported the detection of 22 PLA, People's Liberation Army, fighter jets operating in the vicinity of the Taiwan Strait, with 11 of them crossing the median line of the Taiwan Strait. This indicates that the PLA has once again increased the frequency of its activities around the Taiwan Strait. Of these 22 aircraft, 10 include various types such as J-10, Y-8 early warning aircraft, and drones. The actions of these fighter jets appear to be coordinated with the activities of PLA warships around the Taiwan Strait, displaying a strong military posture. According to the Taiwan Ministry of National Defense's statistics on January 30, there were 7 PLA fighter jets and 4 warships operating around the Taiwan Strait. Although they did not cross the median line, it indicates a gradual increase in PLA military activities. It is noteworthy that on January 31, the Taiwan Armed Forces conducted a Lunar New Year readiness exercise aimed at demonstrating the military's commitment to safeguarding Taiwan's security, allowing the Taiwanese people to celebrate the new year with peace of mind. Meanwhile, concerns have risen over the recent cancellation by China's Civil Aviation Administration of the flight path deviation for the M503 route, running from north to south. Taiwan's Ministry of National Defense spokesperson Sun Lifeng stated that they are studying China's actions and the intentions behind them. At the same time, U.S. National Security Advisor Sullivan mentioned during an event at the Council on Foreign Relations on January 30 that he had in-depth discussions on the Taiwan issue with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi last week. Sullivan pointed out that China did not overly react after Taiwan's elections, showing that both sides are capable of responsibly managing their differences. However, the recent activities of PLA fighter jets and warships, along with the cancellation of flight routes near the median line by the Civil Aviation Administration of China, have raised concerns about potential actions China might take. Sullivan emphasized the effectiveness of the U.S. strategic approach to China, but some members of Congress criticized the Biden administration's diplomatic moves toward China, calling it zombie engagement, and suggesting that these contacts have not achieved any substantive results at the strategic level. News Report 3. On January 30, the Iraqi Pearl Party issued a statement announcing the suspension of military operations against U.S. forces. The organization claimed to cease all military actions, and Pearl Party Brigades, which was established in 2003 and is a semi-military Shiite group supported by Iran. Since its establishment, the Pearl Party Brigades claimed to have conducted 150 attacks against U.S. forces. On January 28, a U.S. military base in Jordan was hit by a drone attack, resulting in 3 U.S. casualties and over 40 injuries. U.S. President Biden stated on January 30 that he has decided how to respond to the attack, as the weapons used in the attack were traced back to Iran. It is widely believed that the United States may conduct strikes against Iranian-backed armed groups in Iraq or Syria, including the Pearl Party Brigades, in response to the increasing political pressure. However, the extent of the response remains uncertain. On the other hand, attacks by the Houthi armed forces against U.S. and British military ships have also raised concerns. U.S. and British naval vessels in the Red Sea and the Arabian Sea were attacked by the Houthi armed forces. U.S. Central Command confirmed that the Houthis launched missiles, stating that the destroyer USS gravely intercepted the missiles, and no one was injured. However, the Houthi armed forces threatened to launch attacks on U.S. and British naval vessels at an appropriate time. This military conflict illustrates the tension between the U.S. military and the Houthi armed forces, forming a delicate balance in military actions. Balance in military actions. News Report 4. New Zealand and Australia are set to hold a 2+2 meeting of defence and foreign ministers on February 1, discussing whether New Zealand will join AUKUS, the trilateral security partnership between Australia, the United States, and the United Kingdom. New Zealand aims to become the second pillar member of the AUKUS agreement. When AUKUS was established in September 2021, its first pillar provided nuclear submarines to Australia, while the second pillar aimed to enhance military capabilities and collaborate in emerging technological areas among the United States, the United Kingdom, and Australia. Australia's involvement in the second pillar of AUKUS is unrelated to nuclear submarines. In July of last year, U.S. Secretary of State Blinken stated during a visit to Australia that the doors of AUKUS were open to U.S. allies. New Zealand's Foreign Minister Peters mentioned in an interview with Reuters that after World War II, U.S. neglect of the Pacific region led to a vacuum, providing opportunities for other countries to expand their influence. He emphasized the need for more U.S. action in the Pacific region to address urgent issues faced by Pacific Island nations and counteract the political influence of other countries in the Pacific region, though he did not explicitly mention China. Peters criticized the previous New Zealand government for adopting an isolationist stance that did not align with national interests, stating that New Zealand needs to establish closer security relationships and partnerships in the Pacific region. He pointed out that New Zealand will collectively express its position on world security and stability with its allies. Previously, New Zealand was a member of the Five Eyes Alliance, but the previous government took a somewhat ambiguous stance towards China. Peters' statement indicates a shift in the foreign policy stance of the New Zealand government. Additionally, U.S. Assistant Secretary of Defense Ratner and Australian Assistant Minister of Defense Phillip met on January 30 in the U.S. Congress, discussing U.S.-Australia defense and security cooperation, including actions in the East China Sea and South China Sea. Both sides reiterated the importance of peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait and the entire Indo-Pacific region. They may also discuss the issue of New Zealand joining AUKUS. News Report 5. The China National Bureau of Statistics released the Purchasing Managers' Index, PMI, data for the manufacturing sector in January on January 31. The manufacturing PMI stood at 49.2, consistent with expectations, and slightly higher than the previous value of 49.0. The manufacturing PMI has been below 50 for 4 consecutive months, indicating that China's manufacturing sector is still in a sluggish state. Additionally, the sub-indices for January's manufacturing PMI show a production index of 51.3, new order index at 49, raw material inventory at 47.6, and employment at 47.6. In comparison, the non-manufacturing PMI was at 50.7, exceeding expectations, with an overall PMI of 50.9. However, the sub-indices for non-manufacturing PMI in January include a new order index of 47, input price index of 49.6, sales price index of 48.9, and employment index of 47. The business activity expectation index is at 59.7, indicating positive expectations. Some observers have questioned the optimistic business activity expectation index, suspecting potential data manipulation. Analysts from the UK's National Westminster Group argue that the PMI data does not show a turning point in China's economy and does not alter investors' pessimistic views. Economists from Bloomberg suggest that the PMI data reflects the ineffectiveness of the stimulus policies implemented by the Chinese government in the second half of the previous year, emphasizing the need for continued economic policies to recover. News Report 6. On January 31, the China National Bureau of Statistics released the Purchasing Managers' Index, PMI, data for the manufacturing sector in January. The manufacturing PMI was 49.2, consistent with expectations and slightly higher than the previous value of 49.0. The manufacturing PMI has remained below 50 for 4 consecutive months, indicating the current weakness of China's manufacturing sector. Additionally, the sub-indices for January's manufacturing PMI show a production index of 51.3, new order index at 49, raw material inventory at 47.6, and employment at 47.6. In comparison, the non-manufacturing PMI was at 50.7, exceeding expectations, with an overall PMI of 50.9. However, the sub-indices for non-manufacturing PMI in January include a new order index of 47, input price index of 49.6, sales price index of 48.9, and employment index of 47. The business activity expectation index is at 59.7, indicating positive expectations. Some observers have questioned the optimistic business activity expectation index, suspecting potential data manipulation. Analysts from the UK's National Westminster Group argue that the PMI data does not show a turning point in China's economy and does not alter investors' pessimistic views. Economists from Bloomberg suggest that the PMI data reflects the ineffectiveness of the stimulus policies implemented by the Chinese government in the second half of the previous year, emphasizing the need for continued economic policies to recover. News Report 7. CNN reported on January 30 that during a summit held in November in San Francisco, President Xi Jinping and U.S. President Biden exchanged brief opinions during breaks. Biden reassured Xi that China claims it won't interfere in U.S. elections. However, U.S. media interpreted this as Xi Jinping assuring Biden that China won't interfere in U.S. elections, criticizing the report as absurd and baseless. The report argues that Xi Jinping wouldn't make such assurances to Biden, and Biden wouldn't expect Xi to commit to non-interference in U.S. elections. Furthermore, during a meeting in Thailand last week between Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi and U.S. National Security Advisor Sullivan, once again raised the issue of China not interfering in U.S. elections. Wang Yi reiterated China's principle of non-interference in the domestic affairs of other countries. However, the report expresses skepticism about this statement, deeming it false. The report mentions that on January 31, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin reiterated during a routine press conference that China adheres to the principle of not interfering in other countries' internal affairs. The report is skeptical of this statement, considering it an unrealistic assertion. It points out that intelligence released by the U.S. in December 2023 indicates that senior Chinese officials have instructed their agents to intensify efforts to influence U.S. policies and discourse since 2020, aiming to widen social divisions in the United States. News Report 8. The International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, released its first comprehensive safety inspection report on January 30 regarding Japan's plan to discharge treated water from the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant into the sea. The report states that the standards for the discharge of nuclear wastewater meet international safety standards. The IAEA investigation team believes that Japan has advanced and robust liquid processing systems, and can effectively supervise the installation and operation of these facilities, all in compliance with international safety standards. The team includes experts from China, Russia, and South Korea. This report contradicts the stance of the Chinese government, which has consistently opposed Japan's discharge of nuclear wastewater into the sea. The conclusion of the report indicates that Japan's nuclear wastewater treatment complies with international safety standards and employs advanced processing systems. Previously, the Chinese government had lodged a series of diplomatic protests against Japan and mobilized the public to boycott Japanese water products. It is worth noting that an investigation by the Japanese embassy in China found that the wastewater discharged by 4 nuclear power plants in China contains levels 6 times higher than the standards for Fukushima's nuclear wastewater. Interestingly, the Chinese government did not strongly react to North Korea's underwater nuclear tests in the past. Therefore, the report's conclusion highlights the dual standards of the Chinese government on this issue, raising questions about its claims of safeguarding public health. News Report 9. The election for the president of the Legislative Yuan in Taiwan took place on February 1. The Legislative Yuan has a total of 113 seats, with the Democratic Progressive Party, DPP, holding 51, the Kuomintang, KMT, holding 52, and the People First Party holding 3. The People First Party announced on January 31 that legislator Huang Shanshan would participate in the election for the president of the Legislative Yuan. As the first round of voting did not produce a winner, a second round of voting is required. With 8 seats, the People First Party cannot secure the presidency in the second round. Therefore, the party needs to decide whether to support the KMT or the DPP candidate. Ko Wen-jae's candidacy aims to make the People First Party a pivotal force with more negotiation leverage. In negotiations with the KMT and DPP, the likelihood of cooperation with the DPP appears greater on a broader scale since the DPP is the ruling party and can provide more administrative resources. Additionally, the KMT has been in the opposition for a longer period, with limited resources. The final direction of cooperation may depend on which party can offer more benefits and resources to the People First Party. The election results tomorrow will reveal a clearer understanding of the People First Party's stance and cooperation direction. News Report 10. Data released by the Hong Kong Monetary Authority for the fourth quarter of 2023 shows that the ratio of negative equity mortgages in Hong Kong is 4.3%, involving 131.3 billion Hong Kong dollars in loans, a 1.2-fold increase compared to the previous quarter. Negative equity occurs when the value of the property mortgage to the bank is lower than the loan amount. This implies that borrowers may choose bankruptcy, especially when the negative equity amount is substantial, to rid themselves of debt obligations. The Monetary Authority points out that these negative equity mortgages are mainly applied for by bank employees or obtained through mortgage insurance plans. The ratio of such loans may be higher, potentially reaching 90%, whereas a normal mortgage ratio is typically around 70%. The Monetary Authority also notes that the proportion of negative equity loans overdue by more than 3 months has risen to 0.03%. Ruan Guoheng, Vice President of the Monetary Authority, states that an increase in the number of negative equity cases during a decline in property prices is a normal phenomenon. Overall, Hong Kong's current negative equity ratio is relatively low, but it remains susceptible to property price fluctuations. The Monetary Authority emphasizes that the quantity of negative equity may rise when property prices fall, and future trends in property prices will to some extent affect Hong Kong's negative equity situation.